It's hard to believe that we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies. All that said, producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes.
Becoming a Next Reel member gives you access to all sorts of additional and exclusive content. Plus, you're helping us keep the lights on. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership, where you can learn more about becoming a member, which costs a measly $5 a month, practically the same as one fancy coffee drink. And you get so much more.
Every month, we record a bonus episode exclusively for members. Those episodes cover movies from whatever series we're covering at the moment, or add to previous series.
Some movies we've covered that only members get to hear us discuss include The Blues Brothers,
The Russia House,
Naked Lunch,
Independence Day,
The Hot Rock,
and Relic, the better one. Plus, members get to vote on what we're going to discuss for those episodes.
We also record additional pre- and post-show content in regular episodes that only members get to hear.
Like conversations about similarly themed movies.
And answering listener questions from our live member chat.
Speaking of our live member chat, we record almost all of our episodes in Discord, where members can chat right along with us live.
Members get access to other members-only channels in our Discord community as well. On top of all that, members get all episodes a full week earlier than everyone else in a private Next Reel feed just for them that includes all the shows in the Next Reel family. The Next Reel, the Film Board,
movies we like, Sitting in the Dark, and more new projects on the way.
To top it all off, members don't have to listen to ads. We've already eliminated those annoying, dynamically inserted ads that, let's face it, we all hated.
We are listening to you.
We love podcasting for a living, and those ads help to pay the bills. Now, we're counting on you, dear listener.
We promise we aren't going back to those terrible, dynamically inserted ads that don't relate to us at all. All we ask is that you consider supporting the Next Reel family of podcasts with a membership.
Again, it's $5 per month or $55 per year. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership.
thenextreel.com/membership. Get your access to early, ad-free episodes with bonus content, member bonus episodes, and access to member channels and live streams in Discord by signing up today.
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Kill list is over. Sometimes God's love is hard to swallow.
1, 2, 3. Abracadabra.
Andy, we're talking about Kill List, Ben Wheatley's film. Oh my God.
Ben Wheatley's second film. I mean, he'd done some TV too, but let's start with Ben Wheatley. Are you very familiar with him as a filmmaker?
This is one of those things where I think about Ben Wheatley and I think, oh, okay, I know Ben Wheatley movies. And then I look at what he's done and I have not seen very many of them.
Yeah.
Like, are you a real Wheathead?
As much as Ben Wheatley is one of those filmmakers who's like, I'm always really like, oh, I've got to add that on the list. It sounds really interesting, like High Rise. And I saw Free Fire. They talked about it on Trailer Rewind. And, I don't think I liked it as much as Steve and JJ did.
I was in the bag for Free Fire. I liked that
okay,
a lot.
Okay.
And High Rise. I liked High Rise.
And see, I didn't see High Rise. And so I feel like when it comes to Wheatley's feature films, like I've seen very, very little, but I keep hearing about them, like Sightseers and Down Terrace and A Field in England. Like it's in the wind as far as like, oh, that was a really interesting film. You should check that out. But for some reason, I have just, I've never gotten past just seeing Free Fire. So, and you obviously are in the bag for Meg 2, The Trench.
Andy, don't even. I love shark movies so much. And the Meg 2, The Trench is a movie that made me rethink my love of all shark movies.
That was like a Wheatley paycheck movie. That's what it seemed.
It was.
Yeah.
It was an absolutely Wheatley paycheck. So here's the thing. that nobody knows what the Meg movies are supposed to be, except for Jason Statham. And every time you hear him interviewed, he's like, nobody listens to me. So I think that anyway. Back to the kill list. Those are the only movies I've seen. So I went into this actually feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
That I was going to be in good hands, with the exception of the Meg, and I feel like I was pretty well taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, coming into this, knowing that Ben Wheatley is a director, like a current young director who's talked about quite a bit. A young director, he's my age.
He's 51. Yeah.
But he's a director who people talk about as making really interesting properties, but one who I've just seen so little of. I walked into this just feeling confident that, okay, I know really next to nothing about this film, but I'm very much looking forward to it because I feel like however it's going to turn out, I'm in good hands with Ben Wheatley. And that's kind of how I walked into this.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. There are movies on this list now that have moved right up my watch list as a result of what he does with this movie. Now, this movie, I think there may be 3 movies in it. It takes some hard turns. And I couldn't help but think of, you know what movie I thought of the most? Sorry to Bother You.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
What do you think about that? Because that's one of those movies that you think you're watching one thing, and then it turns hard at one point into something very, very different. And somehow it works. Somehow it plays. Those relationships between those two stories play very well. This is one of those movies where it is a slow burn up front narratively. It is a slow burn as we learn who these characters are and how their relationships are impacted by his relationship with his wife and, you know, his sort of recovery from this weird event, this traumatic event that happened in his past that we don't really get to hear about. In fact, they slow roll the release of information that he's even an assassin. Like for a lot of the first act of the movie, he's a soldier.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was clearly a specialist. And then that second act, he takes a solid turn dark.
And then even by the time we get to the third act, then it's another turn.
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting with the story is that Wheatley is crafting a story where by the time you get to the end, you can see how there is a thread of all of it coming together and making sense. Like all of it's there for you, but he pieces it together in such just kind of subtle ways where we're really not getting all of the pieces. And we should say, you know, he co-wrote this with his wife, Amy Jump, who has been working with him quite a bit in a lot of like writing capacities, editing capacities on his projects for quite a while. So they crafted this story that allows for us to get a sense of who these characters are without having to dump a lot of exposition into the film. Like it's just through conversations where we're getting bits and pieces about like what happened in Kiev, who knows, but something bad enough where it's kept him from working for 8 months. And it's interesting, you know, I was reading kind of a write-up about this, and they compared the first part of the film to kind of the British kitchen sink dramas, which is a genre that were just very much about people making a living. And that was kind of the sense of those stories. And we get that sense here of a family struggling because their finances are in the gutter and trying to figure out how to make ends meet. And the husband and wife are always at each other's throats. And so we have all of that before it shifts into the hitman story. And we finally get our first intertitle telling us that, oh, we're on our first mission and they're going to go kill the priest, you know, and it's like, whoa, okay, now we're in a Hitman movie. And we have that whole Hitman story for a while before we finally end up in this situation where they're ending up in a conflict up against a cult, and the last person they have to kill is involved in a cult. But we've been seeing bits and pieces sprinkled throughout from the beginning when our principal character's best friend, Gal, comes over and brings a new girlfriend, Fiona, over. And we see at one point in the night, Fiona goes into the bathroom, pulls the mirror off the wall, and carves like this symbol into the back of it. And we're like, oh, wait a minute, what's going on with her? And that just like, that's the first thing that sets us up. Okay, there's going to be more to this story, but I just don't know what it is yet. And we start getting those threads. Like that's the first one. Eventually, when we're talking or when we're seeing them take on the second assassination with the librarian. And that's when we realize, oh, there's a whole level to the people that they're killing that is darker than what we realized. We never really know what it is. Is it like, I don't know. My sense was some sort of snuff film or something that they're doing. And then that sets off Jay and Gal to decide we need to stop this organization in the process. But all of it, by the time we get to the end, it's tying into the people who have hired them. They are there and they're part of this cult. And so Fiona, we learn her job is, in human resources, and she's
HR. She's for a cult.
Well, we don't know, but she's in the HR, but she's the one who fires people. And so is all of this because perhaps Jay and Gal haven't been working up to expectations in the hitman service they're providing? And so all of this is building to a place where they're eliminating them? I don't know. But
I don't know. I think there are a lot of... this is one of those movies that I think it may overtrust the audience to pick up the clues, or it's one of those movies like we did on Sitting in the Dark a while back, where we're talking about movies where you just don't get to know the reason for malevolence, right? It's just a mystery. It's aliens, it's paranormal, whatever. In this case, this movie I think really fits because it's got a real Midsommar vibe. Like, you don't know why their culture or traditions are driving them to do the things that they do on the cult side. You just know that they are, and that they're in control. And once you give yourself over to that, I think the movie plays very nicely. But can't you see how someone might be critical of this movie not being able to retrace the steps from that final massive sort of reveal that it is truly a cult thing, all the way back to her carving the symbol of the cult into the mirror? She is like the fact that it's revealed, and we should say, you guys, if you don't feel like you get the movie yet, please stop listening and go watch it if you don't want to be spoiled. Because
if we haven't already spoiled enough for you, yeah.
If we haven't and spoiled it enough already, please, just that's it. It's one of those movies. So back to the thread, when she takes off her mask, and you realize she's been standing around the fire the whole time, and she's part of the leadership team of the cult. Did you see that coming? And would you have been more satisfied had you been able to see that coming? Or did it feel like a natural evolution? Like, oh, I'm surprised, but now I get it?
That Fiona was there? I wasn't surprised that Fiona was there, because she's the one that we know from the beginning is involved in witchy cultish activities, because she carves the symbol into the back of the mirror. There is that point later where Jay is staying at a hotel and he's looking out of the window and he sees her out there on the lawn. I wrote down in my notes, I'm like, oh, suddenly we're in All of Us Strangers territory here.
Yeah, right.
Looking out at seeing somebody and they're waving at each other. But that was like, is she really there? Is she kind of stalking him this whole time? Or is he starting to have these weird visions and things like that? I didn't know, but again, because of things like that, it really didn't surprise me at all that she was unmasked at the end there. I was surprised, however, by the fact that the client or the person that's hiring him
was also there.
They were all there. His new doctor that he was very suspicious of when he was visiting was also there. Like, they set this up for a very interesting story where it's just, you just are like, wow, okay, I'm surprised that these people all actually, like, what is this mafia organization that they're working for?
Right. And so I think this is one of those movies that is probably for me going to be better on a second watch, right?
Sure.
Because I think I'll know what to look for. Because you're right, the fact that the doctor was a repeat customer to the film, I think is a great point. Somehow he was being vetted, it feels like. Maybe this was initiation, and he's effectively the last man standing. Like, he no longer has any outstanding debts to the world by the time this movie ends. And I don't know. Is the Kill List 2 welcoming the warm embrace, welcoming him into the cult fold, right? Like, I don't know.
Well, that's definitely interesting because the film ends with just an incredible, horrific tragedy, for Jay, that when he is forced into a ring and has to face the hunchback, like the final result of that is just utter devastation and horror.
Didn't see that coming.
No, I never would have guessed. But it ends like with him on that realization. Like we're seeing his face as he realizes what's actually transpired. And that's it. That's all we get for the film. So yeah, what happens next? If this whole thing was put together, because I mean, we have the point when they're at the librarian, and the librarian, when Jay is like, has realized what's happening and decides, I'm going to torture and kill this guy. Like, it's not going to be pretty what's going to happen here. And Gal kind of recognizes it, and so goes to the safe to get the money and isn't around while Jay is doing all of this. But as soon as Gal walks out the door, the librarian is just like, I didn't want to say in front of him, but I'm so excited that I get to meet you, and
thank you.
And thank you. And every time he's getting brutally injured, he's thanking Jay for it, whether it's breaking his knees or smashing his hand to bits. It's just like, thank you. And it's like, what is going on? This is wrong. So it's and for Jay, how does he take that? What kind of world is he thinking he's stepping into? And it's just like, I don't know. Is Fiona actually targeting the two of them because of poor performance, or is it something where Jay, whatever he did in Kiev is actually exceptional performance, and they're like working to step him up in the ranks? Like, I don't know, but it's a mystery at the end because we cut on the face.
So am I understanding you right that you believe that these guys have been working for this organization all along and they just didn't know it?
Well, they've been working with elements of the organization for a while, because obviously there's one of the people that they go talk to, not all of them, but one of the people that they go talk to when they're getting the job. Gal says something like, how long have we been working for you people now? Like he says something to that avail. Like, we've been, like, this isn't the first job we've done with you. So it seemed like there had been some time put in with these people, and this wasn't the first time getting hired by them.
Okay. I guess I can see that. That was pretty opaque to me. I don't think I understood that. This felt like a first-time recruitment when he goes and has to do that blood oath contract signing. That felt like a first time to me. And maybe that's the twist, that I didn't get that these were all part of the same organization, or that they're all working toward, like you say, leveling up. And this was just winnowing down candidates to be brought into the final kind of boss level, so to speak.
Well, and I again, it would take another viewing to really kind of pinpoint some of this, but it definitely felt like there was the client that hires them regularly, or the employer, will say, and that employer has this client and that seemed to be the blood oath, cut your hand open sort of guy.
Okay.
Who was the new person that they were working with, because there were several faces in those meetings. And so I don't know, my sense was one of them they had regularly worked with a number of times. And that, because I mean, based on what Gal had said.
But to your point about Gal was not one of the ones welcomed, right?
No.
For some reason, he didn't know Fiona was part of this organization. Fiona was somehow in here to do something, right? To somehow clear the decks of these guys, one way or another.
Well, and by the time we get to the end, after they foolishly decide to open fire on the group of people, oh, you got to love Jay's hot-headedness. After they decide to do that and are pursued eventually into the tunnels, like the bowels of this place.
It's an interesting word that you would use.
Yeah, right. They kill Gal and disembowel him right in the bowels of
They disembowel Gal in the bowels.
Yeah.
Nice job.
but it doesn't seem important at all. They are fine just killing him and being done with him. Whereas with Jay, they clock him and bring him outside and get him decked out in the fancy hay mask and everything.
Okay. So, Jay, I mean, all of this stuff, all of the mystery stuff is interesting. Then we get to this sort of character study of Jay, who I think is one of the most interesting sort of studies in masculinity that exists on film. Like he to me, I think, is captivating because of the way he portrays this sort of, I'm going to say capital T trauma. Something happened that traumatized this guy in his military service, in his private contracting service in Kiev, that caused him to effectively lose 8 months of his life first, right? Like he loses 8 months of his life because after Kiev, he can't work. He doesn't get his financial house in order. He's letting down his wife. There is a ton of grief that he portrays as this guy who's just trying to be a good parent, but can't communicate with his wife because of what trauma is doing to him. And to exercise that trauma as he gets back to work, he becomes such an extraordinary vessel of rage. And I think that it's interesting to me because he's cast as kind of a soft guy, right? Like the man playing him, the actor, Neil Maskell, he's a fantastic actor and he's not he doesn't cut an action figure aesthetic, right? He doesn't cut the kind of Punisher aesthetic that you expect from a guy like this. He's just a guy whose rage causes him to do horrible things to other human beings and do them so fast and so precisely, bluntly, that it just is shocking, right? I would never expect that from that character that we meet in the first act. That transition to the second act is a massive ramp up, an escalation in who this guy is. And the way Neil Maskell performs it is, I think, totally believable too, which I think is a real feat. I don't know. What do you get out of this performance?
And I think that's why, in the scope of describing the sense of the story, people have talked about that first act feeling very much like a kitchen sink drama. Like we are watching a kind of this broken man who is figuring himself out. Except he's kind of denying that anything is wrong. His wife is the one who's freaking out because they have no money to pay any bills. 8 months of not having any work has left them drained their 40,000 that they had in surplus. And, he is just so dismissive. He's just like, well, just use the vacation money to pay for the spa, whatever. She's like, we don't have any vacation money. Like he is so disconnected. It's just not realizing what is around. And I think it does paint a really interesting portrayal of kind of the breadwinner, because he still acts like he is the breadwinner, but clearly is doing nothing to actually effectively win any bread, right? And that's what makes him so interesting. There's an article I read, unfortunately I lost the tab, but it was interesting in its comparisons in this and the number of times like the Arthurian legend ends up getting brought up. Like he's the fighting he and his son do, he buys those fake swords to play with. He's going to name, if they get a dog, it's either Arthur or Gwynny. Like there are a lot of these references and he's building himself up as this person who is bigger than who he actually is. Like he's telling these fairy tales to his son, but he's making up ones based on kind of his own exploits. And he's like in the land of Baghdadistan, I think is what it was. Like, these two men were helping the king get all this money or whatever. It's just like he's putting himself up on a pedestal like people like King Arthur. And I think that's what's so interesting about him. Clearly then is stuck with whatever rage issues he's having, however he got broken in Kiev. And I think a lot of there are two instances when he is talking with Gal where they end up fighting each other, like rolling around like hardcore. And I think that just speaks to this person who can't get past a lot of those masculine tendencies and the ways that he was kind of trained in the military, whatever it is, but he has a hard time allowing for the more emotional side to come out, and it comes out very physically.
Yeah, right. Another surprise, his wife, Shell, is in on his job. And I actually thought that was going to be yet another layer of intrigue, is the fact that he now has to keep a secret from his family about what he does. But that would have been really tropey, I think. I think the idea that she's kind of in on it, when she says, "Are you looking for work?" After you find out that she's in on it, it changes the nature of their relationship. And my interpretation of her as the spouse is, oh, she's asking him to go take like a hit job, right? She's saying, get your act together and go be this guy.
Right.
And I also have to say, performance, Mariana Buring, this movie allowed me to connect 3 movies, this one and 2 other properties, that I had not thought that these were the same actor. Mariana Buring was Tisea DeVries in The Witcher, which I adore, and was Sam in The Descent. Andy,
yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she was great. And also she ended up getting featured in another of Neil Marshall's films, Doomsday, that he did a little bit later. So she's definitely an interesting actress. Oh, and we should just also mention, we talked about, I can't remember if we called her out specifically, but she certainly is in the Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn Parts 1 and 2. She plays Tanya in those. And so she's great in the film. She carries so much weight in the family drama. And it's interesting when Fiona comes over and is talking to her, and she's talking about her time in the service. And she's like, "Oh, I didn't know you had to." She's like, "I didn't have to. I chose to. I wanted to." And you're like, "Oh, okay." Which that helped in my head when she actually, we find out that she actually knows. Because like initially it's like when he and Gal are in the garage looking at the guns and stuff, it seems like his space, and maybe she doesn't know he has all these semi-automatic weapons in the garage. But then, like later in the film, you realize just how effective she is, because when the house is being attacked, like she's got her gun and she's like taking down all these people. Like she was very effective.
Yeah, and it turns out the thing that he was nervous about her finding out about the guns was how much he spent on them.
Yeah, right.
Right. That it turns out it's a financial issue because they have financial issues. Like that makes a lot of sense. And so I thought their relationship was terrific. Yeah, and that leads to, I mean, when she's taking all those guys out at the end, that leads to the incredible fight with the Hunchback, which is the ultimate end to their family. This twist took me by surprise. As it turns out, again, go see the movie, turn it off now.
Yeah.
That as it turns out, they actually dress her up and gag her and strap her son to her back and put the mask on so that Jay can't see who it is. They call this combination of two, the Hunchback on the title card, and then they make them knife fight, and he has to kill the Hunchback, and then he kills the Hunchback brutally. He stabs and stabs and stabs and stabs the Hunchback, and turns out he's stabbing his own child and his wife, and that's kind of the end of the movie. They reveal who she is, and he starts smiling, laughing.
She does. She's like laughing, like smiling and laughing.
And sputtering.
Yeah. And that's kind of a shock. Like she's laughing as she's dying. And that was really strange. But I think in the scope of being, I don't know, I took it like being in a marriage like this with somebody who's a hit person and a life of violence. It was kind of like this sick horror laugh that she had, like just the bitter irony that this is where we ended up,
Yeah. Well, yes. And could it be that somehow they're trying to make a case that she was in on it too, and that he actually transcended, and this was the last thing that she knew he had to do? Oh man, that's a dark way to go.
That's very dark. I hadn't looked at it that way.
Well, they're already doing human sacrifice. We didn't even talk about they noose a woman as they discover the cult activity in the woods.
Right. Covered in like British pounds or something. Like there was definitely some strange stuff going on. And that's both Ben and his wife who wrote this have been very cagey about actually talking too much about any of this, and they purposefully cut a lot of the exposition out of the film. They left it to be very vague, so we were just only picking up threads of what was happening through kind of just the character conversations. And they also were really trying to downplay specifics about the cult. They wanted it to be this antagonistic end, but they felt it would actually be more terrifying if we didn't have the specific answers for who they are and why. And Wheatley actually stated that cultists are a popular choice of antagonists because people are uneasy about the world and feel a lack of control and understanding. Politicians and bankers who control their lives seem inscrutable. So I think that speaks a lot to kind of how he chose to kind of go the route that he did.
Yeah. Well, I think they made the right choice.
Yeah.
To me, right? I think they made the right choice. But I immediately recommended this movie after watching it to Tommy because, you think about Tommy and you think he's a guy who'd be into something like this. And this is what he said. First and foremost, I'm so glad that you recommended this film to me, and I'm so glad that I watched it. Past that, I'm a little underwhelmed overall, if I can be honest. That is a killer ending, no pun intended, kinda. But it would have worked a little bit better for me if these other random characters had been warning him about the hunchback leading up to it. Even with that name being thrown around, I never would have seen the ending coming, and it would have felt a little bit more like everything was leading to something. Also, I love missed signals, but is this mythology almost maybe too untransparent? Did I miss something? Because I really don't understand the through line at all. Like, I think reading that right after watching the movie, I can see where we might land on a take like that. After talking through it with you, I feel like the through line is clearer to me in that there's so much that it just needs me to make up my mind of on my own.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
right.
It's just going to say, look, these are events that are happening and you have to participate to make it a complete story. That's a fair ask.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where it ends up. The fact that when we end up at the cult, it's not just a bunch of randoms at the cult. One, the final, the MP, the member of parliament that they have to kill is there, like leading it seems. And as we've already said, the client is there, his doctor is there, their employer is there, Fiona is there. All of these people are there. It's not just a random cult that they end up coming up against. And so it just ends up putting it into this place where, okay, this is a force that they've been working for and maybe against over quite a bit of time. And perhaps maybe they only came to this final end. Like maybe, who knows, maybe Jay was meant for greater things based on the conversation with the librarian. But because they go down that road of like when they see whatever sort of snuff sorts of films were on that thing and they go and they kill the people who were at the place that the librarian told them they're working. Maybe that's the reason that they decide to go down this road with Jay and Gal. I don't really know. I just know that when I think about like how we got here, I don't feel like there are missteps. It's a little kind of a confused path, but it felt intentional the way that Ben and Amy brought us here.
Yeah, I think I buy it. Though, as you're talking, like, refresh me, what was it that got them to the cult thing at the end? What was that final clue?
Well, that was the MP. That was the final assassination. They had to go kill this member of parliament who lived in this place. And so they were scoping him out because it's a ridiculous place and they needed to make sure that, I don't know, that it's not being patrolled or whatever.
And all the windows were dark except for one in the corner. And they said, "Oh, that's weird."
Yeah. And so they're also like, I can't believe that just one man lives in this place. Like there's a lot of commentary. This film, came out in 2011. There's a lot of commentary on the state of things at this particular point in time, the recession, the rich and the poor, all of this, even wars that are happening. Like and it seemed like there was commentary here about, this rich man living here all by himself. This is ridiculous. And that's when suddenly they're hiding in the forest, kind of just watching the place. And then suddenly all these cultists walk by with torches, half of them naked. It's just like, and they're like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that then makes sense to me. That at one point after they do the first human sacrifice, I assume it's the MP who steps forward and spreads his arms to get shot, like he was expecting it, right?
It wasn't clear, but I had to read about that in the plot summary, and that's who it is. So yeah, that's the MP.
So had they just killed the NP and left, that would count as the job well done, right?
I don't know. I can't help but feel like because they kill him here, it's weird because it's like he's welcoming the death. Well, first, I mean, because first they shoot the lady who's hanging, right? Isn't that who they first killed, just to kind of like a misery killing?
Oh, mercy killing?
Yeah,
misery killing?
Mercy killing. Jeez. The mercy killing of the lady. And that's why the MP, like when he recognizes that they're there, he stands forward and raises his arms to be taken by the great Jay. I don't know what their thinking is, but clearly like there's something odd there. But yeah, it is an interesting one because if Jay and Gal had recognized, okay, maybe this isn't the night for us to kill him, maybe we come back in the morning, and left, like, I don't know, what would the cult have chased them down anyway? That's a good question.
Right. That, I think, is the interesting thing. Like, was that assassination the inciting? Because they just opened fire on all the cultists, right? As the cultists, naked, running across the British fields, chased them. I don't think they would have needed to have been open fired upon. I think it was the inciting incident of having the head man killed that was supposed to happen, which triggered them hunting the guys down, singling out Jay as the lone survivor and pitting him against the hunchback. That was all in my mind, given cult worldview, a meant to be kind of an event that they needed to have happen. And so one way or another, they needed the MP to sacrifice himself in order for Jay ultimately to fight the hunchback, unleash his history and become one of them. That's how I'm reading the movie.
I can't imagine that Jay at this point is going to turn around and become one of them. Like that's what's so, I don't know, dark and peculiar for me. Like I can't figure out, and you know, again, they're intentionally leaving it very vague for us. So like what is the end from this point? Does he just get killed? Is he the next one to get killed at some point? Or is there a further use for Jay after this point that I'm just not seeing? It's so strange. Obviously, he was somebody that they'd been planning on involving in some great capacity based on the way that the librarian acted about him, right?
Yeah.
And again, based on the way the MP like raises his arms up, accepting death. Like it's so peculiar, and I just can't quite figure it out. But I don't know. I guess for me, I like the mystery that I don't know exactly. Again, to Ben and Amy's point, it's like the cult I don't really understand, but it makes it all the more terrifying because sometimes that's how cults operate.
Yeah, I mean, I have so much experience with cults. Totally agree.
Yeah, every cult I know.
So much of the experience. I think that's it. But I think for me that final indication is just how happy all of the leadership team are when they take their masks off. They're like, oh, look, we did it. We arrived at this, you know. Cue the level end music.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. You said you had not seen Neil Mescal much before. I hadn't. Well, I had without realizing it. He's definitely one of those faces that pops up in a lot of things, including a number of other Ben Wheatley projects. Michael Smiley is his partner, Gal, who is a face that I very much recognized. He's been in a lot of things, including some of Edgar Wright's projects, and is just one of these great British faces that pops up in a lot of things. Where do you sit with Michael Smiley?
Well, first I have to go back and just say you're totally right about Neil Mescal. I've seen him in a ton of stuff, vastly more stuff that I've seen Mayanna Buring. Like, it's just one of those faces. I knew he was familiar, but my God, I've seen him in so much. I'm so embarrassed.
Well, he's kind of that guy, and even though like here he's a fantastic leading man, but yeah.
He is that guy. I found Michael Smiley so much more familiar. And yet, like, I don't feel like I've seen him in all that much. He seems like the that guy in the other direction. I saw him most recently in Gunpowder Milkshake, but without seeing it in his credits list, I wouldn't have been able to tell you who he was in that movie. And apart from that, like...
Did you watch Luther? I know that, like, that was a TV show I know he was involved in quite a bit. I just have never seen it.
Sure, I've seen like an episode of Luther.
Okay.
I'm not a connoisseur of it. I did obviously see him in Free Fire. He was in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Did not know he was Dr. Evazan. Didn't know that. What else have we seen him in?
Well, he was in, Edgar Wright. I said he was the Reverend Green in World's End.
Oh, yeah.
And he was in The Lobster. Yeah. And, things like the other Boleyn girl. So,
oh, sure. Well, he's such an interesting actor because, like, the way they cast this thing, I would have thought he would have been a much, let's say, worse influence on Jay. But it turns out Jay was his own worst influence.
Yeah, right.
Like, Jay didn't need any help. And Gal was actually a restraining element, a constraining element to Jay's behavior. And I thought that was really interesting, the way they cast these two guys.
That's what I loved so much about him in just the way that his character is written, because he has those moments where, I mean, to your point, yeah, he says several times, like there's that time when they're about to kill the priest and Jay says something to him about like, oh, you afraid that you're all the terrible things you've done and stuff. And he's just like, you haven't done that many terrible things. I'm actually, feel like I'm pretty confident about myself. Like he said things like that. He was much less into the violence that like Jay was really like, it would go pretty brutal. And Gal seemed almost turned off by some of that. And so it was kind of interesting for a hitman to be like, he was very clean, like the way that when we first see the planned assassin for the priest, granted, Gal doesn't participate in it because he's afraid of killing a priest, but it's like they've got plastic everywhere. They're moving things away so that things don't break. Like they're doing a lot of work to make it as clean as possible. So the body just disappears, and that's what I found so interesting.
That was an amazing sequence too. Like the way it was shot, right? That he walks in and the priest turns around and all you see is Jay in the dark, that sort of sliver of him kind of in the closet. And he tells the priest, turn around. And the priest says, what? Thank you. And so he turns around, does the deed. And the way he moves out and Gal comes out of the darkness, I thought was exceptional.
Yeah.
Exceptional filmmaking, that sequence.
Truly, yeah. No, it was really interesting, well put together. Great performances. It looked beautiful. Laurie Rose was the cinematographer who has worked with Ben Wheatley on a lot of projects. It was such a surprise of a film for me. I absolutely recommend, if anyone hasn't checked it out by now, we've completely spoiled all the crazy stuff for you, but it's absolutely worth checking out and going down this crazy road with Jay.
For sure. Oh man, Laurie Rose did Freaky. Wow,
that's a fun film.
I've seen a bunch of Laurie Rose. A couple episodes of Silo. Fascinating. Yeah, this movie it's worth a watch. Worth a watch. Give it, be patient through the first act. If you're not into the, adult arguing drama, you'll get there. You'll get there.
Yeah, right. And maybe check the back of your mirror from time to time just to make sure no one's carved a strange symbol into it.
I'm telling you, just keep those things on, nail those hard to the wall. You don't want people being able to take stuff off your walls.
No kidding.
Yeah, especially in your bathroom.
Oh my gosh. All right. Any last thoughts from you?
Not for me.
All right. Well, we will be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Javasite, Oriel Novella, and Eli Cadlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.
Yeah.
Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rusties taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way.
All right. Award season, Andy.
Very, very thin on wins. But, you know, it had more nominations than I would have thought. 3 wins with 18 other nominations. At the British Independent Film Awards, it had 6 nominations. Best Achievement in Production, but lost to Weekend. Neil Mescal was nominated for Best Actor, but lost to Michael Fassbender in Shame. Mayanna Buring was nominated for Best Actress, but lost to Olivia Colman in Tyrannosaur. Wheatley was nominated for Best Director, but lost to Lynn Ramsey, and we need to talk about Kevin. We've talked about that on the show. That's a great one. The screenplay was nominated, but lost to Richard Ayoade's Submarine. And Michael Smiley was the win. He actually won for Best Supporting Actor.
Do you stand by all of those?
I haven't seen enough of those to really speak to them, other than we need to talk about Kevin, which is, I think that's a fair win there.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry I interrupted.
No, you're fine. At the London Critics Circle Film Awards, it was nominated for British Film of the Year, but lost to We Need to Talk About Kevin. And Supporting Actor of the Year, Smiley was nominated, but lost to Kenneth Branagh in My Week with Marilyn. At the Empire Awards, it won the Best Horror Film, and The Reason We're Here, Fangoria Chainsaw Awards. Mescal was nominated for Best Actor, but lost to Liam Neeson in The Grey, which we've talked about. It was nominated for Best Limited Release or Direct-to-Video Film, and lost to Absentia. It was nominated for Best Screenplay, but lost to The Cabin in the Woods. And Smiley was again nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but lost to Fran Kranz in Cabin in the Woods.
Fran Kranz.
This is one. Okay, so we'll save our conversations about the best actors for when we get to the end of this series. So we won't jump into that just yet.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I'm excited to talk about this because we've got already 2 really different types of performances between Mescal and Neeson.
Totally. One of them has a certain set of skills, Andy. I don't know what to say.
Although you could argue that Mescal certainly
also has some skills.
Possibly a lot of the same skills. That's very funny.
How did it do at the box office?
Well, for Wheatley's indie hitman horror, he had a budget of $800,000 or $1.1 million in today's dollars. Nice and tight. This movie premiered at South by Southwest March 12, 2011, then in UK cinemas September 2nd, 2011, before finally opening in a very limited release on 2 screens in the States, February 3rd, 2012, opposite Chronicle, The Woman in Black, and Big Miracle. It never got beyond 10 screens, and it only stayed in domestic theaters for 5 weeks, and while it had a better run in Europe, it really wasn't much. This movie went on to earn $29,000 here and $433,000 internationally for a total gross of $637,000 in today's dollars. That put the film with an adjusted loss per finished minute of $4,907. But with its positive reviews and recognition in the award circles, it certainly helped Wheatley grow his directing career.
That is a crying shame.
Yeah, really. Kind of a shocker, huh?
Real shocker after this movie.
Yeah.
Real shocker.
Yeah.
Yeah. show it some love.
Well, I certainly am glad that I'm glad we had the chance to talk about it. This is one of those Ben Wheatley films that I'd seen the name of before, but never really knew what it was. And so I'm glad to have added it to my list. And it's definitely one that I want to revisit.
I think so too. And it really makes me. I'm a little bit frustrated that I hadn't seen it before we did our missed messages episode of Sitting in the Dark, because it absolutely fits on that show too, right? It fits with The Ritual, it fits with Midsommar, it fits with Dark Skies, it fits with all of those messages where you just don't get to know why the malcontents are after you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, very creepy story. Yeah,
very great horror. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be right back for our ratings. But first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, Scott Derrickson's Sinister.
New details today in the grisly murders of a local family found earlier this week.
I didn't want to move here.
We couldn't afford to live in the old house anymore. Plus, the new story I'm writing is here.
Is the story a good one this time?
I'm gonna write the best book that anybody's ever read.
I got a really good feeling about this. You gotta be kidding me. Family hanging out. Barbecue 79. That's the family who lived here.
You think these are serial murders?
I don't know. The first one I found dates back to the 60s.
The only link between all these cases is the symbol.
The symbol is associated with a pagan deity named Bagul. He consumes the souls of human children.
I have never been onto something this big before.
Early Christians believed that Bagul actually lived in the images themselves and that they were gateways into his realm. Children exposed to the images were especially vulnerable to Bagul's abduction.
Sweetheart, what are you doing?
Painting. I wanted to paint her picture.
Who are you talking about?
Stephanie. She used to live here.
Got her?
What's the matter? What's happened?
Get the kids, pack the car. We have to leave here now.
It is hard to believe we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a lot of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals links to the source material for all of our adapted film discussions. Purchasing through our links supports the show.
In Season 13, we explore various awards categories and the films nominated in them.
We wrapped up our 1940 Best Picture series with adaptations of Mice and Men from John Steinbeck and Wuthering Heights from Emily Bronte's novel, not to mention the play Dark Victory by George Brewer Jr. and Bertram Bloch.
The 1947 Academy Award adapted screenplay series featured Anna and the King of Siam, based on Margaret Langdon's book, plus The Best Years of Our Lives, Brief Encounter, and The Killers.
The 1952 cinematography nominees included Death of a Salesman and A Streetcar Named Desire, A Place in the Sun, based on both a play and a book, and Strangers on a Train, based on Patricia Highsmith's first novel.
So many great movies based on books and plays, like Beckett, The Pumpkin Eater,
A Boy and His Dog, Rollerball,
The Princess Bride, Congo, The Scarlet Letter,
Jackie Brown, The Deep End, The Gray, The Woman in Black,
and Top Gun Maverick, which I'm very much looking forward to revisiting.
Get the source books at thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read or reread from the movies we've covered. Visit thenextreel.com/originals today.
This is going to be a first for me.
Another
first time
for you.
viewing. Yeah, I haven't seen Sinister either.
I said only 2 Sinisters.
See, I don't even know.
I've seen 2. I don't know if there are. I have to look now. I think it's just the 2 films though. Sequel. Yeah, there is a Sinister 2, but that's it. So I've seen the 2 Sinister films. They've talked about returning to the franchise. October 2023, Scott Derrickson stated that he has interest in returning to the Sinister franchise, while the filmmaker said he believed that Sinister 2 hadn't taken the right approach. He stated that he believes there are various ways that a sequel could be developed moving forward, because he didn't direct the sequel. He co-wrote it with his regular writer, C. Robert Cargill, but Ciaran Foy actually directed it. Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah. I may try to watch that one again, too.
Yeah, me too.
Before we have the conversation, yeah. Okay.
Letterboxd, Andy. Letterboxd.com/thenextreel. That's where you can find our main account. And this is the point where we have to figure out how many stars we are going to apportion from our limited, finite number of stars to this movie. What are you going to do?
You've never told the people that it's actually like 6 billion stars. It might be finite, but...
That is the thing that you don't, if you know the answer, you might be too generous. So you have to think that every movie could be the last.
I'm always too generous until I'm not.
Right.
I'm really...
Right. That is exactly right. Until you go see the freaking, what did we just do on the show? Civil War. And you're like, oh, I'm 2 stars.
I'm going to actually take even more stars away from Civil War. My rating for that keeps dropping.
I haven't seen it, but you'll be surprised to hear the show.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm so torn on this. It took in so many different directions. I really enjoyed my time with it. And I'm stuck between 4 and 4.5. Like, I don't know. It's like right in there. I think I'm going to say 4 for now, but it may go up on another viewing. 4 stars and a heart.
That's where I am. I'm a 4+, 4 stars and a heart. And will it ever be a 5-star movie? I don't know. I think actually the movie is better if I go into it knowing that it fits in a hole of I'm not supposed to know everything.
Yeah, that's entirely possible.
Right. If I go in expecting this to be a mystery that I can untie, then I think it's a terrible movie.
That's actually an interesting, you should, since Tommy ran that discussion on Sitting in the Dark about movies where you don't know, like these horror movies where you don't know, like that would be interesting for him to revisit this with that in mind and see if it changes the way that he thinks about the film.
I think so too. I think for me, it's a hit and really great filmmaking. Great performances. I really enjoyed it.
It definitely bumps Ben Wheatley up on the films chronology of films I need to be watching more of. So, or filmography,
not the Meg 2,
except that one, except the Meg
Start
2.
Old. Yeah.
All right. Remember, you can find me at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete at Pete Wright, and the show at The Next Reel over on Letterboxd. So, what did you think about Kill List? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over at our Discord community where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
I've got a thoughtful one.
Oh. Thoughtful.
It's like someone really took some time.
Well, I feel like maybe you should start then, since mine is short and quippy.
Yeah. I feel like I don't think there are quips in this one.
Okay.
This is a 5-star from Adam Naiman. Watch some of this today, ostensibly because the trailer for the Meg 2 is going to lead to much joshing of Mr. Wheatley online, and I felt like spending time with the best thing he's ever made, which is also, in my opinion, one of the best things of its kind that anyone has ever made. A folk horror no less authentic for being so modern, an allegory no less lucid for being so inchoate, a tragedy no less affecting for being so alienating. It's one of the most brilliantly edited films of its era, open, relentless, and daring, I try not to use movies to draw lines between myself and other people, but probably the most irritated I've ever been with regard to a movie was when somebody I used to play trivia with insisted that the movie needed a different ending that didn't traffic in child killing, or that if it did, it needed to be about a character avenging the violence, not one capable of committing it. Trying to talk about how this movie, written by a pair of new parents, might possibly be working purposefully within these ideas simply did not fly. I couldn't believe how anybody could misunderstand a movie so badly while affecting a morally and intellectually superior position to it, a microcosm of a lot of the discourse around Wheatley, whose bratty tendencies in interviews belie how sincere the work is. If Kill List were simply flip or nihilistic, I would hate it, I think. It's because there's real lived-in love and intimacy in the core relationships within marriages, friendships, families, and because it knows how easily and naturally people leverage love against violence, that the real subjects, male rage, insecurity, and cowardice, the displaced resentment of parents, survive all those occult tropes. I'm at a loss to think of an idea more fundamentally upsetting than The Hunchback, and what it means, and the guts and skill it takes for a filmmaker to realize it. The sheer, terrible comic horror of it is the climax that other directors can't or don't attempt, and that a lot of viewers can't take, like my trivia friend. I couldn't love a movie more. And if on Sin's level, it's because I know how much some other people hated it. Oh well.
Wow.
I thought that was really well done.
A lot to say, Adam, and really interesting points throughout.
Yeah, big fan.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there's, this is what, again, I just feel like this is going to go up on future watches for me.
Me too.
Well, again, mine is short and quippy, 3.5 by Cinema Void, who had this to say: "That's what you get when you F with the mighty human resources death cult." Don't mess with HR.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Letterboxd.
I've been podcasting since 2006. In that time, I've tried countless hosting platforms, but in August 2022, we switched to Transistor to power all of our shows here at True Story FM, and it's been a game changer.
I love the Transistor allows unlimited podcasts and storage without extra charges. We can publish so much content, and we do. If you want to start up a podcast, do yourself a favor and host your show on Transistor.
With their one-click publishing, you can get your new show onto all the major podcast directories effortlessly.
And their website builder lets you quickly build custom sites for each show.
The detailed analytics are invaluable too. You can access all kinds of listener data anytime.
Oh, and the versatile players allow you to embed episodes anywhere to reach new listeners. Plus, the team behind Transistor is super responsive and keeps making the platform even better.
After using countless hosting services over 15 plus years, Transistor has been, hands down, the best podcast partner for us.
If you want a hosting platform to take all the worry out of getting your podcast out into the world, go to thenextreel.com/transistor and check it out.
Support our show and support your own show by going to thenextreel.com/transistor. Start growing your podcast today.